right now, make sure you check back sometime in June, or if you're on our email list, if you've registered your software, things like that, which I'll talk about that momentarily, you will get an email from us when we release the new software. So as far as downloading it, there's the installer package, which is an executable file. So you can click that, install it. That's what you're normally going to select. Or there's the zip package, which is a zip file, which is normally for putting on like a thumb drive. That way you can distribute it to other people. Once you've installed it, should open up and you put it on your machine, it's going to come up and look like this. Now, when you first open it up, what you guys are going to see, and I'll just do this. When you first install it and open it up, it's actually going to show up exactly like this. Basically, it's going to say, would you like to register your software? Now, if you have an existing account, say you're a direct dealer with us, you would use that email and password that has been given to you. If you are not a direct dealer, I'd still suggest registering your software again, because you'll be able to get emails from Potter. Normally not spam emails. Normally it's a, hey, we have this webinar. Hey, we have this new equipment. Hey, we have this tech tip, etc. I would go ahead and register that here. But again, if you are an existing account, go ahead and enter that information. And then go ahead and click OK. And it should come up and say registration was successful. Of course, you have to be connected to the internet to do this. Now that we have that software open, the first thing I'm going to talk about is help and about up here at the top. So I'll click help, then about. And again, you guys should be seeing 5.0.3.0. You'll notice on my software right here for version number, I'm actually at 7.1.98. So I do have a newer version of the software. The software that I actually have is going to be what's going to be released in June or whenever it's released. And I will show you some of the newer changes that's coming in the software. I would say the main thing is probably reporting, and then of course our peer-to-peer networking. So you guys will see some differences of what I have versus what you have. And I'll talk a little bit about those, but I won't spend too much time on them. Go ahead and click OK. Window, I'm going to skip this for now, come back to it later. Then there's options. I should say options, communications. Normally you guys won't change anything here. You're going to communicate to your control panel via IP. If you want to choose a different medium, you can choose modem. But I highly doubt any of you guys on this webinar is going to be sitting there trying to dial up through a modem to communicate to your control panel. So I leave it for IP. And that's, again, whether you're directly connected or trying to connect through a network, IP-based is the easiest way to go. If you do choose a modem, of course, you'll have to choose the appropriate COM port, initiation string, whether you want an answer machine bypass enabled or not, and then, of course, the hang-up delay. Then from there, we have options preferences. This is basically saying, where do you want to save those files to? So it's as simple as coming here, selecting a folder, then selecting a folder on your particular computer, or making a new folder if you want to. Once you have selected the folder or made that new folder, go ahead and click OK. Then you should see that directory right here to that folder. If that's all you want to change in here, go ahead and click OK from here. Now all of your files will be saved in that particular location. The other option that is in here, though, is tooltips enabled. I suggest keeping this check marked. What this is for, as you're navigating through the software and you hover over certain items, it's going to tell you how that particular item can be adjusted or programmed, or if it has a numerical value associated with it, it's going to tell you the minimum and max values that it can be adjusted to. And again, once you're done here, go ahead and click OK. Then going back to the options, Registration, that's what I showed you originally. So again, this is where you could re-register. So maybe you were not a direct dealer and you recently became a direct dealer. You can come in here, re-register your software for that new username and password that you have now that you've become a direct dealer. And then options offline code. This is for direct dealers only, but this is basically if you if we have a direct dealer out there, an IPA dealer, I should say, that has lost access to their registration, don't have internet access, whatever it may be, they can contact their administrator on their account. Their administrator can give them an offline code. They enter that offline code here. Then it gives them 10 days worth of access to the IPA series control panels. Then, of course, there's file. File, is basically there's, for you guys, what you're going to see is new, open, close, save, save as, your previously 9 files you've had open, and then, of course, exit to exit the application. A couple new items that's going to be coming in the new software, which is going to be super nice, is, of course, new network. Now, the new network is only going to be available for our IPA series dealers. But for those of you that are buying through distribution, things like that, one of the items you'll see here is this create DACR report. So if you have to create a report for your central station, that's all going to be done through the software now. So your point specific reporting is going to make it super easy directly through the software. Once that is new software is released, we'll probably have a special like tech tips webinar covering some of these new additions to the software. So you won't have to sit through the whole new 2 hours again. And I should have mentioned this webinar normally takes about 2 hours. We'll just have a tech tips webinar, and it'll probably be like 15, 20 minutes covering the changes within the software. And then currently you guys should see this convert feature though. So what the convert is, so if I choose a panel here, and I'm just going to choose an AFC 50, and I know it's going to look like I'm flying through this. Don't worry, I'll come back and cover it all. I'm just going to add some points to it real fast just to demonstrate the convert feature. And I'm just adding some random gibberish names, we'll say. We'll add a couple software zones. And again, I will come back and cover all this once we start actually navigating through the software. And let's say we'll add a dialer real fast. All right, so say you had an AFC 50 out at a site or at an account. That AFC 50 is no longer large enough for the site because they're getting ready to do an expansion. You need to upgrade that to a larger control panel. Nice thing is you can come to File, Convert. It's going to give you a list of all the options of control panels that you can convert that AFC 50 to. And I'm just going to choose the AFC 1000. And you'll notice here, again, it gives you the options for IPA control panels or AFC. I'll click OK. Give it a couple seconds. It should open up with a new file. Now you should see it say AFC 1000 up here. Now if I go back to my software zones, you're going to see my software zones that I added, all the points that were mapped. Again, the points that I added with the custom names, which I know is just numbers and letters for the custom names. Even the dialer. You'll notice that my reporting information is still in here. So again, that's one of the things I like to point out is the fact that when you do that convert feature, it converts everything for you. It doesn't just convert points or zones. It converts everything that was in that software prior to the new software. So it's a pretty simple, smooth, easy process, we'll say. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and close these. To close these, I'm just going to right-click on these tabs at the top and click Close. And I'm not going to worry about saving the changes. So the next thing we're going to talk about is some of these icons up here at the top. And I'm going to start with this fourth icon from the left. And again, if you hover over items, because I have that check mark and options checked for preferences, it's going to tell me that if I select this, it's going to upload the detector status file from the control panel. So I'm going to go ahead and click this. The transfer window will open up then. Then from here, I can enter the IP address of the control panel. Again, the IP address is going to be default for all Potter control panels to be that 169.254.150.70. So once I have that selected, if you're new to the software, I would suggest check marking this box. I don't think it comes default checked yet. I believe it will for the new software. But once you have that, then you can click OK, and it should open up. And it doesn't take that long to open up, whether you're a small system like I do with only 3 detectors, or whether you're a maxed out system with 1,000 detectors. It takes a matter of seconds for this to open up. Talking about this particular screen now, the first section we have here is all dedicated to the smoke detectors. I should say, of course, there's the address of the particular device, sensor type, sensor name, but that's all pretty straightforward. The first section we're really going to talk about here is all for the smoke detectors. So photo current, whether or not you currently see any smoke in the chamber. Photo peak, how much smoke have you seen in the chamber since the last hard panel reset? Sensitivity, so what is the sensitivity of the smoke detector set to? And of course, that can be adjusted in the software, and I'll show you guys that here in a second, from 1.1 to 3.5%. Photo drift, how dirty is the smoke detector? So you notice I have one smoke detector here that's, we'll say about halfway dirty. It's 0.7%. Then there's the photo drift limit. So what is the maximum drift that that detector can have before going into a full-blown trouble signal, to where it basically won't be able to be used. Now you will get a drift alert at 1.2%, basically saying that needs to be cleaned. But again, at 1.7, that's when it goes into that full-blown trouble, and that unless it gets cleaned, it's not going to be working appropriately. Which leads me to my next thing, as far as working appropriately, that photo NFPA compliant, the last box we have here. So our smoke detectors, or I should say our system, is UL listed to test the sensitivity of the smoke detectors from the control panel. When it does this, it comes back and it'll say yes here, so it still meets the NFPA 72 criteria. If you ever see that smoke detector say failed, you need to change out that smoke detector right away because it doesn't meet that criteria anymore. That is for the smoke detector. The next section is going to be for the heat detectors, which is basically the same information. What is the current temperature of the heat detector? So you'll see here it says 72 degrees. Here in my office, it got up to 74 degrees. And then my alarm threshold, or my set point, is 135 degrees. This can be adjusted from 135 to 185, and I'll show you that here momentarily in the software. The low set point, which can be adjusted from 0 to 135, but defaults at 40. Then the low peak, so basically 71 degrees. So this is telling me, hey, currently it's 72 degrees, but it did get down to 71, and it got to a max of 74 degrees in your office. And then the heat rate of rise peak, this you guys will not really pay too much attention to this. This is for the old NOMI 6000 series heat detectors. So unless you have any old systems out there, you won't have to worry about paying attention to this. Then the last section here is going to be all for the CO detectors. So kind of the same thing. Is it currently seeing any gas? And I apologize, I didn't hook my CO detector back up to my system, but again, it's the same information. Is it currently seeing any gas? How much gas has it seen since the last hard panel reset? Then it has its default ppm levels. These cannot be adjusted. They are defaulted according to UL standards. So they come standard for 70, 150, and 400 ppms, or particles per million. There is a different timer associated with these before they go into a full-blown alarm. So for 400 ppms, it's 10 minutes. For 150 ppm, it's 30 minutes. And then for 70 ppm, it's 2 hours. So we've had people before saying, oh, I saw 70 ppms for 5 minutes. I shouldn't say it's not enough for a concern. It's something to at least take note of because it is at least gas in the air, but it's not enough that's going to harm anybody by any means. So again, it's something to take note of, but it's not enough to harm anybody. Then the last sections we have here, CO life remaining. So that's basically saying how much time is left for that particular CO detector. So they do have an 8-year lifespan. And again, it counts down from 8 years. So if it had 6 years and 26 days, it's going to tell you 6 years and 26 days. Now, sensor runtime, this is a little bit of the exact opposite. This counts up. So as you see here, some of my detectors are 80 days, 86, 81. A lot of that has to do with whether or not I've had them actually connected to the system or not. Now, it only counts up when they're actually powered on and connected to the system. We always get the question for CO detector and smoke detectors. When does that lifespan start? Does it start at the factory? Does it start when we receive the detector? It starts when you actually powered up on the system. So when you power it up and that system first gets powered up, that's when the life cycle starts. Then the last two columns here, SLC protocol, which would be either PAD protocol or the old NOMI protocol. Then, of course, SLC name is basically saying, is it built-in SLC or one of the SLC loop expansion cards? And that is the status file. The next one I'm going to show you guys is the history file. So if we go to the third icon from the left, hover over it, it'll say upload history file from panel. Go ahead and click that. I'm going to enter that same IP address, which is that 169.254.150.70. Again, that is the default IP address of all Potter control panels from the factory. Go ahead and click OK. Give it a few seconds here. Again, our history file in the control panels will store up to 4,000 events. So it takes a few seconds to receive that, but still pretty quick. Now, this is just a typical history file, nothing special about it. I mean, it's a time and date stamp and type of event. The one thing I do like to show people, though, is the fact that whether it's the status file or whether it's the history file, you can export these directly to either the Excel or Word document. So you see these two icons up here now that are highlighted or in color. And if I click these, I'm just going to click the Word document because it's kind of the same for both. So if I click this, it's going to export this history file directly to a Word document, and of course does it to the wrong screen. So let me pull this over. And there's that history file. And the thing I like about this is the fact that if you're out doing an annual test inspection, whatever it may be, you can run a history file. You can delete out whatever portion of the history that you don't want. Basically, if you just want to show it for that particular day, only include the history for that day. Delete out the rest. Then it's totally editable document, so you can put your company header information at the top, whatever you need to do. The other thing I like about it is the fact that if you're doing service, you show up at a site, you're trying to determine, okay, when is that particular detector going in and out of alarm or in and out of trouble, whatever it may be. You can use simple Windows commands like Control F. There we go, Control F, which gives you your navigation or your find command. Then you can just input the address of the point you're trying to find. So maybe it's address 11. You can just do 11. Now, of course, that's going to come up with the days. If you're trying to find an SLC point, you can do 0:11. Now it's going to show me everything that's built in, or sorry, that's for point 11 on the built-in SLC. If I had an SLC loop expansion card, whether that SLC loop was 1 or 2, I could see those as well. But unfortunately, I don't have any expansion cards here, so it's just going to be for those. And again, the nice thing I like about it is because you can just scroll and look for the highlights instead of trying to read line by line. And again, that's using simple Windows commands, Control F. The other thing is we have these printer icons up here at the top. So there's one that's print the selected grid. The other one's that print the selected items. So the difference between the two is print the selected grid is going to print everything on this page. Print the selected item, what that allows you to do is if you come down here, I can left click and highlight and scroll. So I have to keep holding my left click button down and say this is everything I tested for that particular day. Once it's all highlighted, I can come up here to print the selected grid, or sorry, print the selected items. It's going to open up with this page. Now I only see the items that I selected. And even from here, I can still export this to either an Excel or Word document. And now I'm only looking at the particular items that I selected on the screen. Close out of all this. So that's the status and history file. The next one is going to be this clear DCR error. That's going to be for anybody that's an IPA dealer. So for those of you that are buying through distributor and you're not registering your software because you're not a IPA dealer, you're never going to see this DCR icon. But for those of you that are IPA dealers, what this DCR error is, that means that basically somebody put an unprotected device on a protected system. And then you will get a DCR error on the control panel. To clear that DCR error, you simply click this icon up here. Now, of course, this is just in a nutshell information about the DCR. There's a whole explanation I can go on with it, but I'm not going to waste everyone's time here. For those of you that are direct dealers and you have more information or want more questions about DCR, which is very minor, I would say, in the grand scheme of things, again, please contact us at training@pottersignal.com and I can talk with you over that privately. From there, we'll go to the second icon from the left, though, and hover over it. It's going to say Upload Configuration File from Panel. So if I go ahead and click this, get that same window, go ahead and enter that same IP address. Click OK. Give it a couple seconds. Now the configuration file from the control panel opens on the screen. Again, it happens pretty fast. The first window that opens up is for the remote access username and password. Now, when a lot of people see this, they see remote access, they think it's when you're trying to remotely get into the control panel. That's not the case. It's whether you're directly connected or remotely connected. This is the username and password, which is always defaulted to Potter, and it is case sensitive. So for instance, if I would change this to say Go Blues, and then say I want to go download to the control panel, which I would use the first icon here. It's going to come up automatically in this screen and give me the Go Blues for the password. But for that first download, the control panel doesn't know that that's the password yet. So you have to use the default or whatever the previous password or username was, which in this case was Potter. Then download to the control panel. Then for every other communication, whether it's upload or download after this first download, you would need to use the Go Blues as the password. But I would say majority of the time, people don't change this. They probably just leave it for the default of Potter. Once you have that, the next one is job details. Job details is typically only used if you're using the email features on the control panel. So if I open this up, I'm going to get this kind of side by side here. And I'll talk about how to set up the email features here in a second. But Job details, again, is if you're using the email features of the control panel. What you can do in the email features, you can set it up to send you status reports, history reports, items such as that. But the one thing that people lack to do is fill out the job details. So when they get these reports or these attachments, like I'm showing here on the screen, the only thing they normally see is what I've highlighted, which is the type of control panel, what's attached to the email, and a time and date stamp. So it doesn't really do that much for you. So what I'm getting at here is if you're going to utilize the email features of the control panel, at a minimum, come into job details, put a job name. So in this case, Boulder City High School. Otherwise, fill out the rest of the information however you want. You'll notice that, there's suggested information for phone, address lines, emails, etc. Just because it's there doesn't mean that's what you have to enter. For instance, for email, we put job number, service contract number. Put whatever's pertinent to your particular job or location. Again, this is suggested information. Put whatever you want. But at a minimum, put a job name. We also have certain dealers out there that they use this just to put information about the system. They may not be using the email features, but they'll put, junction box, first floor, closet 222, or I should say 123 or something. So they'll use this just to kind of be able to pass information on to the next technician. It won't be in the next version of the software, but one of the things we're looking to add is we want to do just like an information box here, just for technicians. This will not be seen in the emails, but again, we want to add just a simple information text box, so that way technicians can pass on information from one to the other through the software. Again, whether it's a junction box or a splice point, or, hey, I did this in the software because of this. Contact me if you have questions, type of thing. So that is job details. The next one is general options. The first item you have here under general options is panel name. You're only going to use this if you're utilizing the FMT or PotterNet software. I don't cover this software in this webinar. We have plenty of training videos on it, and I'll just kind of show you that real fast. Going back to our website, pottersecuhome.com. If you go to training videos, scroll down here, you get to the additional fire training. You're going to see training videos on the facility management tool software, which is right here under this icon. If you are a direct dealer of ours and you log into the website, now that you're logged in, now you're going to be able to see the PotterNet training videos. Again, PotterNet is only available to our IPA dealers, and so they're basically hidden videos on the website. So if you are an IPA dealer, make sure you log into the website to see all of the videos that are available to you, whether it's the PotterNet or whether it's even the peer-to-peer network training videos. And again, you'll notice that there's a lot more options up here at the top to choose from for the PotterNet dealers versus when you're buying through distribution. So there's more information available for direct dealers. That's because there's different types of product available to them. And if you're ever interested in becoming a direct dealer, contact one of our local sales reps, and I'll show you where to do that at the end of the webinar. But again, panel name only used if utilizing the FMT or PotterNet software, otherwise not used. People typically confuse this with the system idle message. So they think that the panel name is what's going to show up on the front of the control panel. That's not the case. System idle message is what shows up on the front of the control panel. So I'm just going to put this here, front of, I should probably say annunciator, because this is what's going to show on the front of all the annunciators. The other thing I will say about this, it is limited to 16 characters. So front of annunciator and 16 character limit. The reason why that is because of the fact that we have those smaller control panels, which have a 16-character display, and so it limits the idle message to 16 characters, which is normally not a big deal. I would say the common mistake people make is they try and put their idle message, they'll try and put ABC company, and then they try and put normal in here. And you don't have to put normal because normal is already going to show up on the front of the control panel. So the next one is default outgoing email address. This does nothing unless you actually go to the control panel, to the keypad screen, navigate to option number 7, then go into the email configuration screen, which is going to give you options for email in the configuration file, email in history file, email status, email test. Then once you're in that screen, it says, do you want to choose or browse from a list, specify new, or use the default? So when you're in that particular keypad option and it says use the default, this is what it's talking about here. So again, I could put an email address here. And again, this is only used if navigating and selected through the front of the keypad on the control panel. Display events. Defaults for initial event, you have the option for newest event. Difference between the two is initial event's going to show you the first detector that went into alarm or first module that went into alarm. Newest event's going to show you the latest and greatest. So I always tell people, do you want to know where the fire started with initial or where the fire spread to with the newest? And of course, it's not always your selection. Make sure you choose or communicate with your AHJ because your certain district may have a certain criteria of what they want on the front of the control panel for the firefighters. SLC blink, default for normal, but you can change it to slow or off. The default of normal makes it to where the LED flashes every 4 to 5 seconds. Slow makes it to where the LED flashes every 9 to 10 seconds. And then off turns the flashing off system-wide. And again, this is a system-wide selection. Once we get to the point tabs, I can show you where to turn this off per device. Now, this doesn't change the communication to the detectors. It only changes how the LED flashes. And that's a misconception that a lot of times people have. So even if it changes to off and that detector still goes into alarm, guess what? The LED is still going to come on and flash rapidly, letting you know that that particular detector is in alarm. Alarm verification time. This can be adjusted from 30 to 60 seconds, not typically used very often. What alarm verification is, it's basically a delay of the notification appliances. So if you have a smoke detector that went into alarm that utilizes an alarm verification, what happens is the detector goes into alarm. This timer starts of 30 seconds. At the end of 30 seconds, if that detector is still in alarm, then the notification appliances activate. Or if at the end of that 30 seconds, that smoke detector went back to a normal status, the notification appliances will not activate. So again, it's basically a delay of the notification appliances. Water flow delay. Don't suggest using it. Can use it if you want to, but it does exactly what it says. It delays the water flow signal. One of the issues, though, is if you come in here and put, say 65 seconds, and your water flow switch itself is already set to 60 seconds, you put yourself over that 90-second threshold. So basically out of compliance with code. So we always tell people, unless it's an absolute necessity, leave this as 0. Let the water flow switch do the work it's supposed to do. Low AC report delay. So comes defaulted for an hour. You can choose between 0 all the way to 30 hours. So from no delay all the way to 30 hours. NFPA 72 says that it should be from 1 to 3 hours, but all the rest of the selections are here because we know that your particular area may have different criteria, or your jurisdiction may have different criteria. But again, NFPA 72 says 1 to 3 hours. On the right-hand side column here, we have door holder low AC dropout delay. So it comes defaulted for 15 seconds. If you choose door holder low AC dropout delay, like Gary talked about yesterday during the hardware webinar, this is that timer for it. So no delay means that when you drop AC power, that means it's going to drop power to the door holders immediately. I don't suggest this because the fact that if you get like a little surge or a little blip in the AC power, you don't want those door holders dropping out instantly. We suggest 15 seconds just because the fact that normally places that do have door holders most likely are on a backup generator or something like that. That backup generator is supposed to kick on within 10 seconds. In that case, the 15 seconds puts you in that threshold where you should be good and door holders would never drop out. 1 minute or 5 minutes, of course, means that they will not drop out for that period of time as well. Now, when you choose one of these time selections, you have to make sure you take that into account for your battery calculations. So again, if you choose 5 minutes, it's going to eat into your battery calc. So make sure you put that into those calculations. Auto test time, auto test interval. So it comes defaulted for 2 a.m., 24 hours. You can change this. I don't know about you, but I do not like getting woke up at 2 a.m. So personally, I'm going to probably select this for 7 a.m., about the time when the day actually starts. The other thing to note here, though, is the auto test interval. Depending on what edition of NFPA 72 you are under, and depending on how you are reporting, you may have to change this to where you report every 6 or 8 hours. And I'm not going to dive into different code criteria, but just note there are differences depending on what version of 72 you're using, or what edition of 72, and again, how you are reporting to the central station. So just know that that's changed over the years. Strobes active when silenced, so kind of the same thing. Something else has changed for 72 over the years. A lot of people think that they can just check mark this box and it's okay. That's not the case. 2007 edition of NFPA 72 and prior allowed you to keep the strobes active when the horns were silenced. 2010 edition of NFPA 72 and newer do not allow this. They say that when you hit silence, everything must silence at one time. However, we do understand that there's some AHJs out there that have amendments to the code, and they want you to be able to silence and keep the strobes active. If they have that amendment, go ahead and come in here and check mark the box. If they're just telling you and they have nothing in writing, personally, I would ask them for something in writing. And the reason why I would do this is because this is not just an NFPA 72 requirement, this is also an ADA requirement. And if it wasn't for ADA pushing NFPA 72, this would have never made it back into the code. So again, this is not just a 72 requirement that they have to be silenced all at once, it's an ADA requirement. And that's why I tell people, if the HJ is just verbally asking for it, that's one thing. Doesn't mean you necessarily have to do it. If they are verbally and they have nothing written, ask for something in a written format. It's that whole CYA. Cover your butt. Enable power line clock synchronization. So I know we have several people here that are international. I think we have some from Latin America, some from the Middle East, items like that. So for those of you that are international, not sure what frequency or what hertz you're operating on. So here in the US, we all operate on 60 hertz. For those of you that are international, you may be operating on 50 hertz. If you are operating on 50 hertz in your power line, make sure you come in here and uncheck mark this box. So again, for those international customers that operate on 50 hertz, uncheck mark this box. For those of you guys in the US, keep this checked. It's going to help keep that clock synchronized. The next one, enable CO tone temporal 4 pattern on enunciators. It does exactly what it says. Not sure why you'd want to uncheck mark it, because when you have a CO tone or a CO detector, one of the things it says in 72 is it must enunciate a temporal 4 pattern. So again, I would keep this check mark because you're going to get that CO pattern on the enunciators now. Low temp events are supervisory. So if you have this checked, we have those heat detectors that have the option for low temp. When you have that selected, by default, it does a trouble signal. But if you come in here and check mark this box, it's going to send a supervisory signal. Now, I will say NFPA 13 says if you have a low temp in a riser room, it must be defaulted for 40 degrees and send as a supervisory signal. So if you're using it in accordance with NFPA 13, make sure you come in and check mark this box to make it a supervisory signal. Now, I do believe for the next edition of the software, this will come defaulted as supervisory. Disable 24-hour PZT resound. This is that piezo sounder on the annunciators. I do not suggest checkmarking this box. So again, what this does, when you get an alarm, trouble, or supervisory signal on the system, you hit silence. 24 hours later, it's supposed to automatically resound. If you checkmark this box, 24 hours later, it will not resound. Which again, I do not suggest doing this because the last thing you want is for your customer to think that everything is okay. You want to make sure that this stays disabled so that way your customers are going to call you to set up a service. The only reason why we have this in there is because we have a certain customers that operate in remote areas of like Alaska where it takes them multiple days to get to their destination. We have customers that, in Russia as well, places like that where it takes multiple days because they're just in very, very remote areas. So in that case, they do turn it on for the customers. But for those of you guys that are within hours driving distance, don't disable it. Keep it on. Bug your customers. Display time is AM PM, so that's a 12-hour format. If you uncheck mark the box, it's going to be that 24-hour format. So choose whatever your heart desires there. Synchronize to network time. So we have a default to synchronize to the North American time pool server here. If you're operating on a different area within the planet Earth, we'll say, make sure you choose the appropriate time pool server for your particular area. Whether it's Middle East, whether it's China, wherever it may be, choose your appropriate time pool server. And then, of course, choose the appropriate time zone as well. And then daylight savings. If you're one of the lucky participants in daylight savings, keep that box checkmarked. And I'm joking about being a lucky participant. If you are actually one of the lucky participants that doesn't have to choose or doesn't have to participate in daylight savings, uncheckmark this box. And you are the luckiest person in the world. Now, I don't know about luckiest person in the world, but I envy you. I do not like daylight savings. So that is it for general options. We've talked about all the stuff up at the top. We've talked about remote access code, job details, general options. One thing I have not said yet, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to type those into the chat box. I'm going to grab a drink real fast. And then when we get back, we're going to talk about the points section of the webinar. So I'm skipping zones and cross zones because what you really need to do first is set up points. Once you set up points, then you can set up your software zones. All right, so getting back into this, got my little drink of caffeine going there, so we're good to go. Oh, question coming in. As far as documents to download, so yeah, in the hardware, we did have quite a few documents because we had the data sheets, manuals, battery calcs, things like that. We do not have any documents for this particular webinar. We did have the software in there at one time, but that's why I just kind of at the beginning just show you where to download the software from, because at one period of time we were making several changes to the software and we kept forgetting to change it in the materials section of the webinar here. So now we just kind of show you where to download the software from, but that's about the only document really that's coming out of this webinar is the software file. Once you're in points though, we have a few different columns here. The first column for the device column is basically saying, where's that device terminated to? Is it going to be in the built-in power supply, built-in SLC, maybe an SLC lib expansion card? Again, just saying, where's that device terminated to? The second column, that's the address of the column. Pretty straightforward there, I think. You will notice for even the built-in power supply, those have addresses associated with them. And then, of course, the built-in SLC from 1 to 127, if it's a larger control panel. And then as you add those SLC lib expansion cards, those would be from 1 to 127 as well. Then the name of the column, this is where you can put a particular name for that particular device. Now, one thing I do like doing is giving a custom name for the notification circuits. We used to do a lot of schools, and one of the things I liked, there's one particular control panel that we used that allowed you to give a custom name. Unfortunately, when I was installing, we used several different manufacturers. One of the manufacturers did allow us to do a custom name, which I liked, just because going back and doing service, I would always put, where the end-of-line resistor was located. The reason why I would do this is because of the fact that when I'd have to go back and do service, I would know instantly, because it would show me on the front of the screen that built-in power supply address 1's in trouble, and it would give me this custom name, room 202 EOL. So I would know exactly where the circuit started and where the circuit ended. So before I even had to get out any plans, anything like that, I had an idea of where I needed to start. And as you all know, good luck finding plans anyway. Everybody's like, oh, what about the documents box? Yeah, because people actually put stuff in the documents box. Or I would just fold it up and put it behind the control panel circuit board. Then the next person comes along, they take it out, and who knows where it goes. If they probably set it on top, and then the cleaning crew comes by and throws it away. All right, so that's how you would do that. Again, custom name, limit it to 20 characters here. If you are working with those smaller control panels, though, it's only going to give you 16 characters on the front of the control panel. And the question here is, because I said, this, I would put where my end-of-line resistor was located as far as like which room, hallway, or something like that. Question is it possible to change the EOL value? So yeah, if we come over a few columns to the right, you will see EOL value here. Defaults to 5.1K. If you double click in the box, you can change it from 2 to 27K. And the great thing is about our addressable control panels, this circuit could be different for each, or sorry, this value could be different for each circuit. So this circuit could be 27K, this one could be 5.1, this one could be 10 if you wanted it to. I'm not sure why you would have several different circuits out there with different values like what I have shown here. Most likely you're probably going to have a few circuits of whatever the existing value was, and then the rest of your circuits would be whatever the new value is, which would, in this case, would be 5.1K. The next column is the type column. Now, when I did my upload for my control panel, I already had some detectors and modules uploaded, connected to my control panel, so they're going to see those here. So I had a couple smoke detectors, which are the PAD PDs. You guys will see that for your software currently, it shows up as PAD 100 PD, but give you a little bit of insider information because this actually just changed. It's just going to say PAD PD now, and the reason why this is we have some new detectors that are coming out. So we're ditching the whole possible 100 thing, and we're changing the name of how some of this may change or how it look in the software. One of the ideas was just called PD. The other idea, which I think is probably what's going to happen, it's all of our current stuff is just going to say pad PD. All of our new stuff is going to come out and say pad 200 PD, pad 200, whatever, combo CO smoke, whatever it may be, to let you know that it's the new stuff. And as we come out with new detectors, things like that, we'll just change it to pad 300, pad 400, etc. So that way you know that you're working with one of the newer smoke detectors, or if you have multiple styles of smoke detectors on your system. But even then, you can give that smoke detector a custom name. So if I want to say, okay, this is above the fire alarm control panel, I just double click in there, say above FACP, I'm good to go. The mistake that people make that eats into the information is they'll come and they'll say smoke above FACP, or photo above FACP, or, you know, of course, we have people from Latin America. I think this is how you guys would do it, is FOTO. Again, you don't have to do that. You can just put above FACP, and whatever the type is set to, that's going to show up on the front of the control panel as well. So if it's a photo detector, it's going to show up automatically with photo on the front of the control panel. If it's a heat, it's going to show up as a heat. If it's a CO, it's going to show up as a CO, etc. Even then, if you had, say down here, I have this pad 100 sim mem. I have it set to a contact input pull station. I don't have to put that it's a man pull adjacent to FACP, because the function's already set to pull station. That's already going to show up on the front of the screen. So all I have to do is put adjacent to FACP. If this was a water flow switch, tamper switch, again, even if I were to set these, so if I come in here and set this to a water flow, and if I set this to a tamper, that name information is going to show up on the front of the control panel as well. So I could come in here, and now I can just say, okay, this is riser 2. And it's going to show up on the front of the control panel, built-in SLC, 12.1, riser 2, water flow, or built-in SLC, 12.2, riser 2, tamper. So you don't have to put tamper and water flow in this custom name unless you want to, unless you like duplicating information. I mean, that's ultimately up to you. From there, come back up to the smoke detectors. You'll notice for the function of the smoke detectors, they're sensor only. Choose the drop-down box. You can choose whether it's with the sounder base or relay base. If I choose sounder base, it's going to be a sub point of the detector it's attached to. I'm just going to say sensor only with that one. And the same goes if this was a, we'll say if I had a heat detector, sensor only, sounder base or relay base associated with it. Again, if you're if you're writing your program from scratch, you can see as I did there, I just click this drop-down box under the type column. Then I can choose any detector or module that I want for that particular address number. So again, if I want it to be a CO detector, I choose CD. If I want it to be a heat detector, I just choose HD. If I want it to be a combo smoke heat, I can choose the PhD. Now I'm going to talk about this here for a second. So there's a difference here. You'll see that there's a PhD and a PhD split. The difference is how they show up within the software. So a PhD, it's the same detector. It's just a matter of how you can map it in the software. So a PhD does not allow you to separately map the heat detector from the smoke detector portion. If you choose PhD split, you can separately map these in the software. Not only that, when one of them activates, you're going to know whether it was the smoke or whether it was the heat. If you choose standard PhD, it activates. You just know that that detector activated. You don't know whether it was the smoke or whether it was the heat. So I always tell people, I personally would probably choose PhD split every single time, so I know whether it's the smoke or whether it's the heat that activate it. Even from there, you can still come in and choose whether it's with the sound or bass or not. It's all going to be subpoints of, in this case, 0.5. I'm going to go ahead and put these back as unused. The other one I want to talk about down here for types is the the duct detector. So we have two different style of duct detectors. We have a duct and a duct R. The difference is when you select the function of that particular duct detector. So if we choose sensor with duct relay, that's basically the duct R. If you choose sensor only, that's a standard duct. Now, if you ran a learn on your control panel and uploaded it from the control panel, it's automatically going to know whether it's a duct or whether it's a duct R. This is only whether you're writing it from scratch, is whether you need to know whether you're installing a duct or duct R. I would say 9 times out of 10, people are probably going to run a learn it into the control panel, then pull it out of the control panel with an upload of the configuration file. We'll set these back as unused. Then the relay modules. So whether it's the relay on the duct detectors or whether it's the relay module itself, there are different functions associated with those. They come default for relay general purpose. This is what you can use for, you can use it for air handler shutdown if you wanted to. You could use it for any type of control function. So if you want to shut down background music, elevator controls, again, any type of control function. There are other selections here, which are zone trouble. This basically says that if you choose zone trouble and you put it into a particular software zone, that if anything in that software zone goes into trouble, then this relay module would come on and change states until that software zone returns back to a normal status. HVAC shutdown. I definitely would choose this for any time you're utilizing HVAC shutdown. The reason why is because it automatically makes this a non-silenceable output. Then reset follower. This does exactly what it means is if you choose reset follower, it follows the reset button of the control panel. So anytime you would hit reset on the front of the control panel, this relay module changes states momentarily for 10 seconds. So if you have to provide a reset to some sort of power to, like, flame detectors, beam detectors, duct detectors, whatever it may be, you could set up a reset follower to cut the power to those units in order to restart them. Question here, how can you get the relay LED to stay on when it's activated? You cannot, unfortunately. I wish you could. I know that every other manufacturer does allow this, and I will say that is something that you're not able to do with our software. So again, when a relay activates on a Potter control panel, the LED does not illuminate. It does not flash rapidly. It does not latch on. Again, it's something I wish it would do, but it doesn't. And the reason why they do that, though, from my understanding, is to conserve energy, we'll say, on the SLC. So while most manufacturers allow you to only activate, normally it's like 12 to 15 detectors on the SLC and keep the LED status LED on, we can do 25 to 30, and that's because we don't turn on the LED for relay modules. Is it right? Is it wrong? I don't know. Is it probably the worst thing that can happen? No. Is it something I wish would change? Being honest with you guys, don't go and tell my employers. Yes, I wish they would come on. Mainly for me, because I wish if it came on, it'd be easier for me when I'm setting up live training demos for the customers. because right now I actually have to bring 24-volt power to my relay modules just to power an LED on to let you know when I'm doing a live training that the relay is active. But again, sorry for the whole digress of that, but no, it does not come on, and there's no way to make it come on. So let's start writing a program here. So we'll go up to our notification circuits. We'll start there first. Click the drop-down box. Choose what sync protocol you're going to use. So if you're using Gentex sync, if you're buying your appliances from Potter, you're going to choose a Gentex sync. Again, just click the drop-down box and choose that. I'm going to do a little. You can say yes or no. If everybody says no, I won't probably bother with doing it. But does anybody do hotel apartment scenarios with sounder bases? If you do, just say yes in the chat box, and I'll do an example of sounder bases programming to be able to do the temp 3 and temp 4 out of the sounder bases. All right, so it looks like majority of everybody is saying yes. We got a couple no's in there. I apologize for you guys that said no, but we have a majority of people saying yes. And I'll say for you guys that are saying no, just because you're not doing it now doesn't mean you probably won't have to do it sometime in the future. It just could be a fact that your area has not adopted some newer editions of code that's requiring this yet. So in that case, if you are using sounder bases with our system, you do need to set up sounder base power. If you try and power them with constant power, what's going to happen is when that sounder base activates, you're going to get a constant tone out of it. So again, if you want to do different temporal output patterns out of the sounder base, you will have to set up sounder base power. So we'll set that up for NAC 6. IO circuit 1, I'm just going to say that this is a pull station. So you notice now for the IO circuits, because they're inputs or outputs, they can be any of the sync protocols, door holder power, or again, anything down here. So I'm going to choose a pull station. IO2 and IO3, I'm going to make this a water flow and a tamper switch. And you may ask, why is he choosing tamper over supervisory? That's because they actually report to the central station in a different, with a different contact ID code. So I always try and, when I'm doing these trainings, make sure people understand that when you have a tamper switch, choose tamper as the function, because it actually sends a contact ID code as a gate valve sensor, the way it's supposed to. If you choose supervisory, it's going to send a generic supervisory code. Then for my last IO circuit here, I'm just going to make it a door holder power. We have a couple door holders in our building. Actually, I'll choose door holder low AC dropout. So we have a couple door holders, and I need to set that up as well. Then from there, I can get custom names with these if I wanted to. So for my pull station, I'll just say it's adjacent to FACP, water flow, and my tamper. I'm just going to say these are riser 1. I'm going to say that pretend that my control panel's in my riser room, and I'm able to monitor the water flow and the tamper switch directly from these input circuits. And I'll just call that door holder power. Don't need to, but I'm just going to do it anyway. Then from there, I do have some detectors already connected, but I'll add a few more as necessary. So I have my smoke detector that's above the FACP. I have another smoke detector here, and I'm just going to say it's elevator lobby. And I'm just going to call it elevator lobby for now. And once we set up our software zones, I'll show you how you can get more information on the front of the control panel. So for instance, when I set up my software zone, I'm just going to call it first floor, second floor, third floor, etc. So I'm not putting the floors on this yet. So we're going to set up a elevator recall scenario here as well. We need a couple. We'll do a PhD split. We'll say that this is a elevator shaft. I will do another PhD split. We'll make it in the machine room. That's that. I'm gonna come down here. We have our other pull station. I'm gonna call this for the front door. Oops. This dual input module we already set up and called it riser 2. Now I need to set up some relay modules for my elevator recall. So I'm gonna choose 4 relay modules here. And I just did that by left clicking and selecting multiple and then right clicking to do that. If you're interested in software shortcuts, I don't go over it in this webinar, but we do have a video called Software Shortcuts. In this case, primary recall, alternate recall, fireman's hat, and shunt trip. And I'll keep all these as relay general purpose. Then from there, I'll set up two duct detectors. And we'll make these duct R's. And we'll call it just AHU1. And AHU2. And we'll change these relays to be HVAC shutdown. So again, that way it automatically makes them non-silenceable. Now, the other thing I could do if I wanted to, if I knew I had other points to randomly put in my software, which I know I do, I could come up here to this box, check mark, and check mark it's called hide unused points. That way I could see everything that's actually connected to my particular system. I have a heat detector here. So this heat detector, I'm just gonna, we'll put this in the electrical room. We'll say 302. This relay module we'll call it a Muzak shutdown. And leave it for general purpose. The TRTI, and again, guys, I'm just making this building up with everything as we kind of go here. The TRTI can be used multiple ways. I'm gonna pretend that we have some existing conventional duct detectors. Actually, yeah. I'm gonna pretend that actually I'm gonna use this in a different way. I'm gonna get rid of a couple of my relay modules up here, so I apologize. And again, it's the writing this from scratch. So I'm gonna get rid of my fireman's hat and my shunt trip. I'm gonna come down to my TRTI here, and I'm gonna say I'm gonna use this for my fireman's hat relay, shunt trip relay, and then make this my shunt trip monitor. So instead of using multiple modules, I can do all this from one module if I wanted to. I can make this a supervisory. I can make my input 2 on here unused. Or I can make this a trouble, whatever I wanted to, I could make this for. We're just gonna make it a supervisory though. Then from there, I have another relay module. I'll just say that this one's the, for some reason, we're using a relay module to activate the outside water flow bell. Then we have the key switch down here. Now my question for you guys, would you guys rather see me, and you can just put disable, or you could put test for test station, but would you rather see me program this for a disable in the NACS, items such as that, or setting it up for a remote test station? I will admit that either way we go, it's fairly similar. So if we set it up for disable, it's kind of the same thing as setting it up for test, or vice versa. So, and I'll say majority rules. So if we get majority test, I'll do test. If we get majority of disable, I'll do disable. And I will say that this comes in a default as a fire drill. So you can use this key switch for a fire drill as well. So if you have like a school or something like that, instead of them touching the control panel, you could set up for a fire drill. All right, so it does look like majority is ruling here, and they want to set it up for a test switch. And like I said, if we do it one way or the other, it's very similar to setting it up. So we'll set this up as a we'll say AHU1 RTS for remote test station, and we will make this a supervisory signal. Now, one of the things I did not do yet for my air handlers is I did not check mark the box. So now that I have everything I think set up over here, this next column is for supervisory signals. I'm going to assume that most of you guys probably set up your duct detectors to be supervisory. So I'm going to want to check mark this box next to my air handlers. So that way I know that they will be supervisory signal. Any function that was set up as a tamper or supervisory will default check mark this box for you. So again, the only time you really have to check mark the supervisory column box is when you have like duct detectors, maybe a smoke detector that you want to be supervisory signal. Otherwise, the next column is the alarm verification column. What this is for, again, if you want those smoke detectors to when they activate, delay the notification appliances, you can check mark this box. Again, don't just do this by default. This is something you have to get approval from your HJ prior to using. Low temp. So if you want those heat detectors to utilize low temp, check mark the box for low temp. EOL value, we already talked about that. LED blank disabled. So this is where I was talking about. You can come in and disable the LED per device. So if you're dealing with that, I forgot to set up the apartments. I was getting ready to say, if you're dealing with that apartment scenario, you can do that. So let me come in here. I'm gonna set up we'll do a simple, just 2 apartments with sounder bases. Yeah, actually, I'm gonna make this a CO detector.